What's up, motherfuckers? It's Josh, your friendly metal nerd here. Welcome to my new channel, formerly known as Agent Mad Hat. I guess you could still call me that if you want to. But this is my new channel exclusively based on music reviews, specifically catering to heavy fucking metal. So we're going to start off this channel right with, it's a little bit past the halfway point of this year, so we're going to be doing the top 10 best metal releases of 2021 thus far. And we're going to start off with some honorable mentions. These are albums that honestly could have made the top 10, but maybe I have not spent as much time with them as I'd like. Maybe I haven't digested them as well as I'd like, and maybe they're just not as good as some of the other 10. So let's get into some honorable mentions. First of all, we're going to mention Dark Throne with their new album Eternal Hells. This is Dark Throne going straight up doom metal, doomy classic blackened heavy metal. It's definitely Dark Throne. They are doing what they're doing. They are always shifting their sound and tweaking it a little bit, but they're still Dark Throne. Whatever they do is always fun to listen to. Another honorable mention, Djevel with their album Tanker som Rir Natten, which I think translates to Thoughts Which Ride the Night, which is a Norwegian black metal band that really I feel like could be high up on my list at the end of the year, but again, I have not spent as much time digesting the album as I might like to. Another honorable mention, Panopticon with their album And Again Into the Light, which this is Panopticon. I think every one of their albums that they've released has been on an end of the year list of mine. This will probably be no different, but the thing is, it's such a dense album. There's so much to absorb with it, and I haven't spent the time with it that it deserves. And I just haven't enjoyed it as much as some of these other ones that are on my list. Another honorable mention, War Moon Lord with their album Battle Spells. I have loved War Moon Lord. A couple years ago, they released an album called Burning Banners of Funereal War. I think last year they released a split album, and this year they released another album, and they're one of the most promising black metal bands. So I'll spend some more time with this album. We'll see how it goes. Could be on my end of the year list. Next honorable mention, Woad, Burn, and Many Mirrors. Again, a lot of people have praised this album, have called it one of the top black metal albums of the year. I tend to agree with that sentiment, but again, just have not came back to it as many times as some of these other albums, and so I need to spend a little bit more time with it. I need to explore it a little bit more, but there you go. Next and final honorable mention, power traditional metal band Warrior Path with their album The Mad King. Fucking great guitar oriented technical power / traditional heavy metal. Again, like just as all these honorable mentions, it could be high up on my list. Honestly, it could dethrone some of these other albums that I'm mentioning, but I just have not spent the time with it to really dive into this album. I haven't had the urge to come back to it and revisit it as much as some of these other ones. So with that, we'll get into the 10 best metal albums of 2021 thus far. Number 10, and it's going to be a tie. I know that's kind of cheating. A band called Null with their album Arraeth, and then Halloween with their self-titled release. The Null album is kind of a really long, it's kind of a double disc, atmospheric, folky type of black metal thing. A wonderful guitar work. The only problem I have with it is it's really fucking long, and it can get a little bit tedious to listen to. Otherwise, this is an amazing album. I would not be surprised if it occupies a really high space on my end of the year list. Tied with that is power metal, one of the pioneers of power metal, Halloween with their self-titled album, in which they bring back some of their original members that haven't been heard from in many years. I think there's 3 guitarists on this motherfucking thing, 2 vocalists maybe, and this is just a completely ambitious power traditional heavy metal album that's just coated with that cheese, that so cheesy, not the kind that you don't like, the kind that you do like, that kind that every metal nerd, every power metal nerd, every traditional metal nerd longs for. Those fucking amazing guitar solos, soaring vocals, everything you want from a Halloween record. So there you go, that's the 10th spot. Number 9, Tribulation, Where the Gloom Becomes the Sound, which is, Tribulation is one of those bands that I think they originated as kind of a melodic death metal band with a little bit of black metal influences. They morphed their sound and incorporated more gothic elements, especially in their 2015 release Children of the Night. Influences from bands such as The Cure. And so they do the same kind of motif with this album, and it's really good. They know what they're doing. I think this is going to be their last album as a band, which is, it kind of sucks because they're really good, but this is a fitting way for them to go out. A lot of melodic and awesome guitar work, a lot of gothic metal influences, a little bit of black metal sprinkled in there, death metal vocals, heavy as shit. What more can you ask for from this band? Number 8, I don't know how to fucking pronounce it, Atvum or Atum, ATVM. The name of the album is Famine, Putrid, and Fucking Endless. So this is kind of, I would call it a extension of something that maybe Chuck Schuldiner would have done with his band Death. This is a progressive, thrashy death metal band. The vocals kind of remind you of an old school 80s metal band. It has the aesthetic of a technical progressive death metal band, but without the shiny, polished production. Now, don't get me wrong, the production is clean, everything's clear, you can hear everything perfectly, but yet this album is a beast all of its own. It's not really like any of the other technical death metal bands that are kicking around these days. Really good guitar solos, really great, a little bit of jazz influences here and there, a little bit of post-metal sprinkled within it. Fucking great album. I'm sure it's going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. Famine, Putrid, and Fucking Endless. Number 7, Spectral Wound, with their album A Diabolical Thirst. This is just straight up cold, dark, evil fucking black metal. It's got a little bit of melody mixed in there. This is something that could be straight out of Norway from the 90s. This is an amazing album. The honestly really standout track is a track called Frigid and Spellbound, but the whole album just flows directly and flows so greatly. This is frigid, cold. The guitars are just tremolo picked with a lot of melody, a lot of evilness. The vocals are what you would expect, the shrieking vocals. The production is raw but yet full, just this wall of tremolo sound that if you're a black metal nerd like me, you will really enjoy this fucking thing. The only reason it's not higher up on the list is because the last half of the album is a tad bit lesser than the first half of the album. So that's that. Number 6, Epica, with their album Omega. This is symphonic metal, kind of power metal, kind of prog a little bit maybe. Female fronted. The singer vocalist Simone Simmons gained her recognition from some of her features in the early Camelot albums. Amazing vocalist. This band knows what they're doing. It's at the same time catchy and digestible, but at the same time a little bit complex, a little bit technical, a little bit out of the ordinary. It's a really, really good album, and especially if you're a newcomer to heavy metal, this is great for you. If you like that catchy kind of, if you like Nightwish, if you like female vocals with heavier parts introduced to it, sometimes you'll fucking love this album. I find myself singing along to it a lot, especially with the song Rivers, especially with the let me look. I forget the title sometimes because I'm a fucking idiot, but especially with the song Abyss of Time, especially with the song Rivers, Code of Life, Twilight Reverie, all this great things that this album has to offer. So that's number 6. Number 5, The Lion's Daughter and their album The Skin Show. This album is so like it's just unsettling in a way, and I can't really describe necessarily why that's the case, but it just has an unsettling feel to it. It's like a tiniest bit of black metal with a sludge metal background. The vocals are kind of something you might hear on a Mastodon release, but yet they incorporate this synth, this kind of new wave 80s type of something you might hear from a horror movie soundtrack in the 80s type of synth shit. It's really good. It's they just incorporate it so well into this creepy, unsettling, wonderful album that just sticks with me. I feel like it's criminally underrated, to be honest with you. The only place that I've really heard a lot of praise for it is on the Metal Meltdown, and maybe a couple of random metal websites that don't get a lot of attention. So really, if you've never heard this band, if you've never heard this album, check that shit out. Number 4, Bewitcher, Cursed Be Thy Kingdom. Man, this album, there's one only thing to describe this, and it's metal fun. It's fun fucking heavy metal, speed metal with a little bit of black metal influences. It reminds you of a maybe a Bathory or a Venom, but with its own identity translated into the modern era. It's such a fucking good album. Guitar solos are fucking great. It's metal as fuck. Just listen to the song titles and you'll know what you're in for. Death Returns, Satanic Magic Attack, Electric Phantoms, Cursed Be Thy Kingdom. What can you want? This is a greasy, dirty, fun batch of fucking speed black, new wave, British heavy metal, that type of shit that you love if you're a metal nerd like me. Number 3, Thy Catafalque, Vadak. Don't know how to pronounce it. This is a band I think hailing from Finland. This is some of that Josh, you really listen to some weird shit type of band. This is a band that really fits the label avant-garde because they really defy genre classification. Their foundation is rooted in extreme metal such as black and maybe slightly death metal, but they sprinkle in some influences like trance, electronica, a little bit of jazz, spaciness. It just has its own identity. They take all these elements, stir them up in a big pot, and make a avant-garde metal stew that just is fucking amazing. You just have to digest, and you have to listen to it multiple times to get it. It's just so engaging, so incredible. I feel like this album will really be in the top 3 or the top 5 at my end of the year list, like Catafalque, Vadak. And then we get to number 2 and number 1, and I feel like these albums will not be dethroned. The only thing that could challenge these two would be if Cradle of Filth releases a straight up banger later on. So number 2, Ad Nauseam with Imperative Imperceptible Impulse. Now they had an album that came out in 2015 that I really liked, and it was sort of a kind of in a similar vein to a band like Gorguts, like kind of avant-garde, like technical weird ass death metal with black metal influences, really odd time signatures, really chaotic and dissonant. But then this year they fucking stepped up their game and they made something fucking just masterful. There's such attention to detail on these compositions. It's fucking horrifying. It is a horrifying, twisted, fucking crazy ass slab of death metal that's just, it has such of its own identity. It's like a fucking terrible acid trip, but you love every fucking second of it, from the little bit of jazz influences, from this just like odd time signatures, dissonant, crazy vocals. Everything is just deliberately composed to just create this dissonant, swirling, chaotic, ridiculous atmosphere. The only downside to this album is, I would say, that you really have to be in a certain mood and a certain mindset. This is not something you're going to put on and jam to with your friends at a party. This is just something that you have to spend some time digesting. It's something that you have to spend some time, and you have to be in a certain mindset, and you have to be engaged and soaked into it. But if you are soaked into it, it's a fucking masterpiece of compositional avant-garde death metal awesomeness. Then we come to the number one album, an album I feel like will most likely be my album of the year, Mare Cognitum, with their album Solar Paroxysm. And man, this is just spacey, cosmic black metal. Really long songs. I think every song on this album is over 10 minutes. The shortest one is 10 minutes and 30 seconds, with this amazing lyricism, this melodic, atmospheric tremolo riffing, that this engaging, spacey atmosphere that you just soaks you in with so many sound textures. There's a lot of random lead guitar parts that engage you. The drums are furious, but at the same time they can be subdued sometimes. The vocals are perfectly placed in the mix. Everything's perfect in the mix. It has the perfect flow to the album, and the cream of the crop is that the closer, the final track on this album, closes the album out on such a high note. That fucking riff that kicks in the refrain of the last track, that fucking amazing shit. This is spacey, cosmic black metal, Mare Cognitum, with Solar Paroxysm, my number one album of the year thus far. I expect it to, if not be number one, I expect it to be in the top at least 2 or 3 at my end of the year list. So there you go. First video on my new channel. There you have it. Peace, motherfuckers.